We want to welcome you to a very special Arctic edition of our weekly talk about cyber news. And I say Arctic not because I'm in Alaska anymore, but because it's getting cold in Seattle, Mike.
It's getting cold, but the whole National Weather Service blizzard warning in the Seattle area, that was a bit oversold.
It was not a, you know what, Mike and I have very different takes on this. Where I think if you don't warn people that something's coming, then you get blamed for. It's like this is just like cybersecurity. What are you going to do? Like not say, "Oh, ransomware could hit our organization," and what it does is say you didn't warn. But if you warn about ransomware, it doesn't hit. Then
Yeah,
like
well,
hmm
blizzard is a pretty specific thing, right? And I've worked with weather models before. They have error bars. So,
mm,
you know,
mm.
so blizzard warning, not one snowflake, okay?
There was
Match
not
those
a
up.
blizzard warning for Seattle. There's a
It,
blizzard
it was
warning for the mountains, and you're just wrong.
It
But
it
that's
said
okay.
well, it said the
Let's get.
Seattle area is what the world heard. Okay, let's move on. Let's move
Oh,
on.
oh. All right. Um, So let's talk about cybersecurity. Tomorrow
Okay.
is our first security awareness training of the year. Mike has new slides in there for 2024.
Some
Uh,
stuff.
one of them is because we got a pretty good one today from one of our partners who said, "Hey, here's my conference agenda," and it turned out that their O365 account had been uh, hacked, and it wasn't a conference agenda. So yeah,
Well, I don't know if you knew this. While we were doing sales kickoff in the other room, because Jake and I are actually in the same building right now. We're in the Seattle office. While we were doing the sales kickoff, um, a person who will remain unnamed um, hit a bad link, and I got the warning, and others on my team got the warning, and while everybody else was paying attention to the presentation, this particular person was having all of his sessions closed out and had to re-authenticate and re-MFA
Mm-mm-mm.
to get his way back in. And
Mm-mm-mm-mm-mm. I know, and you know what? But that's why you have the controls, so
yep,
nothing bad happens.
yep.
Okay. I think we say this at the end every time, but in the beginning this time, we'll say importantly, patch Chrome,
Mm,
right?
mm.
Patch Chrome. Okay, now let's get to the news. So this robocall operation, this is a big deal. What's this? What's the robocall thing that you were talking
So
about
I
earlier today?
personally made this go away because I'm sick of all of. No, that's not true. So the Department of Justice, there's a company called XCast, and they got fined $10 million because they had a massive robocall operation going.
Mhm, mhm.
And so they provided VoIP services that, frankly, transmitted billions of illegal robocalls. And so I would say this is a great thing to happen. It's frankly only one vendor out of many that does these things. And so I mean, the robocalls, they can be benign, they can be useful if you are on a list. Turns out political people call me all the time. Who knew they had my phone number? But it is irritating, I think, to most people, and I'm glad they got their butts fined.
I knew you wanted to talk about that. Is it cyber? No. Does it annoy Mike and he wants to talk about it? Well, yes. So he gets a little airtime to talk about that. Okay, now let's get to more cyber privacy stuff. There's a story we talked about last time, which now has gotten even bigger, which is the bad guys' ransomware tactics, where they're taking data from hospitals, either hitting hospitals, hitting healthcare organizations. It happened at a school, and it used to just be that they go after the organization and say, all right, pay this ransom. But now they're going after the patients, and this happened to one of our dear organizations in Seattle, Fred Hutch Cancer Care.
Yep.
So what happened there, Mike?
Well, so what happened was exactly what's been reported. They started to first they were contacting all of the victims, right? The individual holders of those records, right? The,
Hmm.
the, the
Hmm.
people whose records were stolen, and saying, "Look, here's what we do. We sell these exclusively for $50 a record. And if you buy your own record back for $50, it doesn't go to anybody else. All right.
Mm-hmm,
If
mm-hmm.
you believe them, right? And so, in addition to that, they were trying to extort Fred Hutch. Fred Hutch said, "We're not going to pay you." And so what they did was like ramped up the evil here and started threatening, did not follow through, started threatening sending SWAT teams to people's houses if Fred Hutch didn't pay so that they could put pressure on Fred Hutch. Um, that's all pretty reprehensible. But if you think about it, there's a couple of underlying things going on here. And I think one of those is that there's such a glut of records out there that they're looking for other ways to monetize them, and going to the victims themselves and say, pay for your record to make sure that you're not, somebody doesn't buy a home in your name or something like that, is a strategy. And if you think about it, there's so many records out there, so many of these dark market operations. How do you differentiate your records from somebody else's, right? Your competitors' records. And so I think there's been downward pricing pressure on stolen records, and they're looking for new lines of revenue. And
Mm-hmm.
I hate the way that all sounds, but I think that's really partially what's going on here. Ramping up the violence part of it is something that we've been hearing lately more and more, right? The scattered spider gang and throwing through bricks through windows, and threatening people and their families if they didn't get a password, things like that. That's the troubling trend right there.
Yeah, I
uh,
mean that getting more and more violent, towards the victims. Okay, that's number one. Number two, so this seems like the opposite of that. The Lockbit ransomware gang,
right. Hmm.
did the opposite. They attacked a healthcare organization, but then said we're going to avoid encrypting the we're going to avoid encrypting the data. Or what? So what happened there? And
Right, so they're
are they
not
trying to
using.
be the good guys?
Well, so remember, there's a difference between, if you use ransomware against a construction company, you're a criminal. If you use ransomware against critical infrastructure, especially the healthcare sector, you're a terrorist. And so, right, that new set of tools that we use with terrorists is something they'd like to avoid. So there's been this kind of, in a lot of cases, backing off of the use of ransomware in favor of just stealing records, and say, if you don't want these to be public, and you don't want the class action suit, and you don't want the FTC and the False Claims Act, pay us, we'll give it all back to you, which may or may not be true. But here's Lockbit that said, they stole over 10 million files, and I forget what healthcare organization, US healthcare organization, I can't remember which one this was, but it was like 7 terabytes of confidential medical
Hmm.
data. And they said, well, this is valued at about $250,000. But their quote was, this is what was interesting: we purposely didn't encrypt this hospital so as not to interfere with patient care. So, and I will remind you that one of the Lockbit people just got prosecuted and convicted.
Right.
Does that have something to do with this? Like, maybe,
Maybe. Maybe.
right?
I don't
And
know.
I think those convictions are going to create a deterrence. And so if they back off of doing the stuff that makes patient outcomes deteriorate, maybe that's the DOJ doing their job right there.
Maybe so there's something never trust a criminal is all.
It's hard not to be
There's
cynical. I know.
It's hard not to be cynical.
Yeah.
Um, Moving off of healthcare, we've now, Mike, seen a number of mortgage companies being hit by ransomware, and I'm
Yeah.
starting to wonder if there's a trend here.
There's
First,
Mr. Cooper,
Mr. Cooper, which holds my mortgage, and I hope that
of
it meant
First
that I
American
wouldn't have to
Financial.
pay mine. Yeah, and now Loan Depot.
Loan Depot, right. Right. So they didn't say, whether any data was stolen.
Hmm.
So every time they say that, they say, well, we can't tell whether or not data was stolen. Data was stolen. Okay. So they're telling, customers that their recurring automatic payments are still being processed, and they can make payments by phone, which means probably not ransomware, probably has not
Hmm.
snarled their network. Would say, well, we can't tell whether records were stolen. Yeah, of course records were stolen. The bad guy's going to monetize this somehow. They're going to extort you somehow, and it's through records.
Yep. Yep.
But there is a trend. Yes, there is a trend, because that's 3 weeks,
Right.
or maybe longer than that.
Yeah, I mean a little bit longer than that, but
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so it's 2024. Congratulations. There's not just an election here this year, but I read the
Uh-huh.
most number of Democratic elections in the world. Is it ever? I don't know, but I mean like that. There's a huge number. And two big stories this week. Talk about both of them, Mike. One, that Iran, China, and Russia are winning the, propaganda war,
Yeah.
and which of course influences elections. And then second, the FBI and NSA, are expecting deep fakes and they're preparing for that.
We've all seen this coming. You and I have talked about it a whole bunch of times. The strategy from Russia and China is really to exacerbate existing divisions, right?
Hmm. Wait,
Exploit.
are you saying there's division in America?
I am.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay.
I'm from Oklahoma. Okay. So they what they do is they form through all their cutouts, right? Their sock puppet accounts and stuff like
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
They form these relationships with the far left and the far right, and then they pour gas on all the just incendiary fringe nuttiness that comes out of both sides. And when people read this, they think everybody is crazy, and it makes everybody withdraw more into their whatever corner they are in, right? And it works. We know it obviously works.
Hmm.
In fact, there was a really interesting article, um, how doing your own research leads to uh, just bad results. It's on Motherboard, right? It was Vice News runs Motherboard. That's their tech. The article is really worth reading. But then, so yes, the FBI, NSA, right? They all know that this is happening, and the disinformation and the fake accounts and the trolls and the bots, and I think they're getting a lot better at identifying them, and hopefully working with the companies to make sure that they have standards of practice in the social media companies that helps them identify them without going and saying remove these accounts. They don't say remove these accounts. They say these accounts are not adhering to your standards of practice and conduct, therefore do what you're supposed to do anyway. And so I mean, and that's like one of these things that the trolls, the bots are going to throw gas on. Oh, they're censoring, right? No,
Right.
no such thing is happening, but that's the way it's going to be positioned. So it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. But yeah, when we have that many federal agencies that are involved in this, and I know that the states are super involved as well. They're really trying to identify and counter disinformation, not remove it, but counter message it, so everybody knows this is false. No, election day is really this day. This is really the precinct where you vote. But whatever. I mean, you laugh, but some of that stuff is
No,
that
no,
primitive.
absolutely, absolutely true. I mean, there's that case. Was it in South Carolina where people got sent to the wrong place? I mean, yeah, these are all real things that happen. But I think
Mhm.
the grander scale is the propaganda campaigns that screw with people's beliefs about the facts in the world. So
Yeah.
I think all of those are problems. Okay, Mike, threats and vulns. What do you got?
So Ivanti has had a couple of vulnerabilities in the last couple of weeks, and this is a Connect Secure product that's under active exploit right now. So, if you were
And
an Ivanti user, make
And
sure you
and
get that
hey,
patched.
one quick note on this: our incident response team actually sends out emails about
Yeah.
the a lot of the vulnerabilities that come out, and they sent one out to our customers yesterday. Our website also captures those. If you look at the vulnerability section of our website, and if
Oh,
you're
good.
if you're
I
one
didn't
of
know
our
that.
and if you're one of our customers and you aren't on that email or want to make sure you get that email, let me know and I'll get you on there. It's jake@criticalinsight.com. All right, keep going. What other ones you got?
Yeah, there's this thing called NoahBot, which is actually it's Linux systems are being compromised for crypto mining. And so and this is actually super primitive. If you have SSH server facing the internet, you're looking at thousands to hundreds of thousands of password guesses all the time, just continuously,
Yeah.
right? Right. So that's really the one there. It's they're trying to brute force into an account. Cisco says their Unity connection bug would let an attacker get roots. This is CVE 20272. Check that one out. That's having to do with a web-based management software,
Mm-hmm.
which frankly should not be open to the web like the internet, right? Look at me,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
people. If you have
Mm-hmm.
admin interface facing the internet, don't do that. The KEV, the known exploitable vulnerabilities list that CISA maintains, they've added a number of things to this. Adobe Cold Fusion, Apple products, D-Link DSL router, Joomla, access control vulnerability. So you might want to, periodically go consult that list, which is getting very long. And in fact, when we do vulnerability scans for our customers, we match those scans against that list. And if they have
Mm-hmm.
something that's on that list, we make sure we notify them right away. And then what else? Microsoft SQL servers being attacked, Mimic ransomware. Check that out. If you have applied the patches that you just got, that should not be a bad problem. The Windows patches just came out, and I see I have a little orange dot on this computer, and I need to reboot. Don't tell
Don't tell
anybody.
people. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And in fact, in the Microsoft patch bundle, there's another one. There's a Kerberos bug that will let you bypass Microsoft security. So make sure you get those patches applied, and then patch Chrome.
Patch Chrome. Hey, a question actually came in on our live YouTube. Brad's asking, do you gents feel that other nations see the same divisive propaganda that we see here in America? I have an answer to that because I actually studied a lot of Italian politics. I lived in Italy for a while and studied Italian politics, and they certainly see it there as well. Russian.
It's tailored to your groups that hate each other, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. For us, it's right, left politically. It could be, religious boundaries, could be whatever. But yeah, they're stirring the pot for destabilization everywhere.
I mean, it was in, I believe Emmanuel Macron's site was hacked. His re-election site was hacked at one point. I think it was the Russians or the Russian gang. I'd have to look it up. But I mean, the truth is, based on everything that I've seen, America sees it more than others. I've seen one thing that says, it has to do with, being the superpower. It has other things to do with,
No way. That's not it.
gullibility. It has
60% of Americans read and write at a 6th grade level, and 60% of Americans get most of their news through social media. All right. The Venn diagram of those two groups is probably a circle. All right. So we make it too easy for them.
I mean, I think that there are parts of it that are aligned with that. At the same time, I mean, I think the way the U.S. goes impacts China and Russia a lot more than what happens in a single European country.
It does, and both China and Russia have a preferred outcome in the upcoming presidential election and are going to be pulling all the levers to try and make that outcome happen.
We'll see what happens.
We will see what happens.
And from that, Mike, at the end of all of these, we do a kicker, something that should make people chuckle. What do you got? What do you got?
Well, you and I have talked about like the smart home and, whatever you start your treadmill from bed by your phone. So you get, okay, whatever. It turns out there's a thing that is a network connected wrench. And apparently hackers can infect these wrenches to install ransomware. Okay. First of all, it's called the Nut Runner, which is like, who is in charge of, okay. But it's actually running an operating system, the Nexo OS. And it says the firmware can be controlled using browser-based management interface. So you could actually take over a wrench. And the reason I made this the kicker is because guess what recent example may be connected to this?
What?
Know anything about airplane doors that weren't bolted down properly?
Oh, come on. No way. No way.
Okay, that's not actually my theory. I got that from somebody else. But
no.
Russia hacked our wrenches and plane doors started flying off.
Oh yeah. That's the problem. No,
That
Mike.
will never be a headline. That
You
will
know
never
what?
be a
This was
headline.
not your best kicker ever. No,
Oh, come on.
although I did have to giggle at not runner. That was pretty good. And that is really the name. He didn't make that up. Believe
I
it or
did not
not.
make that up.
All right, everybody. Good seeing you. We'll see
Yep.
you next week. Security awareness training tomorrow, and have a good day. Bye
Have a
bye.
good day. Bye, everybody.